I'm going to tell you a story. This story is about forgiveness. As I was reading a book that talked about offense and forgiveness, it's called Bait of Satan. I thought through my life. There was a time in my life where I had a hard time to forgive. I was about 8 years old, and by that time, I had begun to have a bit of breasts, but not much, but just the breasts were starting. I stayed in a home, my uncle's home. It was a big home, and a lot of people stayed in the home. So many kids of different ages that every time we had to prepare the dining for food to be served, the people that were served were between 7 and 21. Sometimes there would be 14, sometimes there would be 7, sometimes they would reach 21 people. We had different kids of different age groups. Those were my age, between 7 to 10 or 12. Then those who were aged between 16 to about 20. And then those who were at university, probably in their 20s, like from 21 to about maybe 26. And so on and so forth. At home, my uncle had rules. There were rules on how to do house chores. There were some kids that used to stay with us during the day. They would be brought in the morning. They'd stay with us during the day, but in the evening, their fathers would pick them. Their fathers are also my uncles. They were all brothers to my father, and my father at that time had already passed on. So during that time, a rule had been passed. The kids who are being picked in the evening are the ones in charge of setting the table for food during daytime, that is for lunch. And then the kids who stay the night are the ones in charge of setting the table for food for dinner, or you could call it supper, because we used to eat supper at around 10 p.m., between 9 and 10 p.m. Now, I was among the kids who used to stay the night, so I was on the roster for those setting the table for supper. And that day, I was the one in charge of setting the table for supper. But there was another kid in charge of setting the table for lunch. My auntie used to be the one who cooks for us. That's my father's sister and my uncle's sister. My uncle owned the home. So this time around, my auntie was quite older, just like my uncle, way older. Now there is a cousin. Let's call him Carlos. Carlos came back home. During day, it was after 1, and Carlos went to my auntie, demanding for food. Carlos said to my auntie, "Aren't we eating food today?" And my auntie responded, "Those kids refused to organize to set the table." So Carlos came and asked, "Where are those kids?" And then there was another older cousin who was in the same age range as Carlos. Carlos was at university at that time. Let's call this cousin Loretta. So Loretta responds to Carlos and says, "That Millie over there." Now Carlos always tried his best to please Loretta. So when Loretta said, "That Millie over there refused to organize the plates." True, Loretta at some point had asked me, "Organize the plates." I refused. I told her it's not me who is supposed to organize the plates. I told him the person who is in charge of organizing daytime plates today. But she did not want to hear it. She just wanted me to do it. But I continued to go and play. So when Carlos comes and Loretta tells Carlos, "That Millie over there refused to organize the plates," Carlos went straight to where I was playing from. Carlos got my tiny hand into his palm and held me by the hand, grabbed me so tightly, and dragged me into the house. We had a big house, and he went straight into one of the bedrooms. That was the girls' bedrooms where we slept. So when we reached the bedroom, he drags me inside and then locks the bedroom with a key and puts the key in his pocket. Now in that bedroom, we had one double-decker and then 2 single beds. One of her sisters, let's call her Reese. Reese was seated on top of one of the decker bed. She saw Carlos dragging me in. Reese was older than me. No, Reese sounds like a boy's name. Let's call her Rita. Rita was older than me, but Carlos was older than Rita. So when Carlos drags me inside the room, he starts to beat me immediately. There was no talking because everything happened so fast. There was no questions. I kept saying, but it's not me. I'm not the one. And he just kept beating me, telling me, shut up. And then slapped me, left, right, center, slapped me on the cheeks, on each of, like he kept just beating me everywhere. And oh my goodness, he kept beating and beating. Remember, I didn't know where my mother used to stay. My father had already passed on, and my mother used to visit us once a year. And that time, she had stopped visiting us because sometimes she would visit us once a year. Sometimes she would skip 2 years before she visits. We didn't know what was there between the adults, what kind of agreements, or what her life was like. But the last time she visited, I was maybe probably like 7. And she brought me a black dress. I loved this black dress because I had very few things that came from my mother. Every time I wore this black dress, it made me feel closer to my mother. It made me feel like there is someone in the world that probably cares or something. Like I felt a connection to her. I loved my black dress. It was black with tiny white polka dots. They were like flowers. From afar they looked like polka dots, but closely they were like flowers, tiny flowers. I loved my dress. Every time I would bathe and I'm clean, I would want to put on my dress and I would always feel good. So I was wearing that dress. Now as Carlos continued to beat me up and hit me up, he stopped. Then he looked at me and demanded. He said, remove your dress. Remember, breasts had started to come. So I had tiny breasts. So he says, remove your dress. I refused because I had heard stories in the home of Carlos defiling some of my cousins, my other younger cousins. And so the worst came to my imaginations because you are hitting me on the cheek, on the head, everywhere. Why do you need me to go naked for you to do that? I didn't say that, but those things were going on in my head. So I refused to remove my dress. Now this enraged Carlos the more. He beat me up, kicked me, bet me, slapped me like he was beating with sticks. They would just remove that belt. He beats you with that belt everywhere. He finds, he just randomly beats everywhere. And then he said, I said, remove the dress. I said, no. Then what he did, he held my dress by the neck with both hands in my chest, but holding the dress, and he tore it in two. And the tear went straight from the neck down to the bottom of the dress. Oh my God. When Carlos did that, I felt like he tore me to pieces. Immediately, I dashed under the bed. I dashed under the decker bed, where her sister, Rita, was up enjoying her solitude. I was screaming, I was shouting, I was crying out loud, calling for help on top of my lungs. Now, when I dived under the bed, Carlos got everything he could throw, telling me, I said, get out from there. He wanted me to come out so he can beat me naked. He started throwing shoes, anything he could touch. Started throwing bottles underneath there. Whatever he could touch, he would throw. I kept screaming the more because I was seeing my life going before my eyes. Now, passers-by heard. And I was wondering, why isn't the sister saying or doing anything about this? But no, she did nothing. Nothing to stop him. Passers-by came. People came on the window because the window was closed, so they started banging outside. The curtain was also down, so they couldn't see anything, but they could hear my screams. So people along the pathway that had me came to the window. They started banging. They started demanding that he stops. They said, "Stop, you're killing the child. Can't you see you're killing the child? Can you stop it? Stop, stop, stop." They were screaming. In the process, I think they called for more elders. So those who were able to come into the house, we lived in a big house, they walked in and came to the door only to find the door locked. The door for that bedroom locked. So they started knocking and commanding, saying, "Carlos, open the door, stop." All that while, even though I could hear the screams of the people on the window and on the door, not even once did Carlos ever stop beating. He didn't stop sending. He was looking for a stick to poke me from underneath the bed. He was throwing things under the bed, commanding me to get away from there. Come out, so he can beat me some more. Eventually, one of his older brothers came, and somehow he found a way to open the door. I don't know whether they got another key or they broke the door. I have no idea, but they got the door open. He first commanded him and said, "Carlos, open this door at once and stop beating that child." But no, he didn't stop and he didn't open the door. So they found a way to open the door. And when they opened the door, he was still enraged. He wanted to beat me. So he was like furious. He was fury. So they held him. They held both his shoulders to stop him from beating me. And then they commanded me, "Get out of this room." So I got out from underneath the bed and ran out of the room with my dress torn in two. I went and I sat we had a shed. It was a veranda attached to the house. And it was at the back end of the house, and it was facing a pathway. That was the side where the window was. So I sat there and I started wailing and crying. I thought of running, but then I asked myself, where will I run? My father is no more. I don't even know where my mother stays or where she comes from. So I sat there on that veranda and cried. I held my dress to my chest. I wrapped it a little to wrap where they tore. And I just sat there and cried. And I just cried. And people passed by shaking their heads saying, "Why do these people beat these kids like this?" But that's all they could do. I just stayed there and wailed and wailed and wailed and wailed. I kept telling God, why? Why was I born? I kept cursing the night my mother met my father. I kept cursing that night that she got pregnant by me. I just kept cursing everything because I was blaming everyone who contributed to me coming on earth. I felt so bad. But then that day something else was birthed. A hatred like I've never seen before. I hated Carlos from the bottom of my heart. Boy, I hated the man. I hated everything about him. I hated anybody who resembled Carlos, looked like Carlos, walked like Carlos. And if anyone tried to talk me into going back to liking Carlos, I would hate them too. Now life moved on. After me crying, it dawned on me that my life here will probably be taken out someday by beating. So I mentally prepared myself for death. I was like, I should be ready. Anytime, any day, someone in this house will beat me to death. So I mentally got ready for death. The problem with that, I became so hard. My heart became so hard. Like, I didn't have any compassion in me. I didn't have remorse. And I was not sympathetic anymore. Like, those are three things that left that day. Sympathy, remorse, and compassion. So, life continued. As I continued through primary school, or grade school for some people, my mama gave me that dress when I was about 7. Carlos tore it up when I'm about 8. And I never saw my mama again until high school. So I continued through life. Carlos finished campus. Carlos kept wondering why I hate him. Now time reached. Carlos forgot everything. Carlos forgot ever beating me or tearing my dress up. But I remembered that like it is happening still. I would be seated in front of our house or their house, because it was my uncle, it was his father's house where I was staying. But I would be seated and we are laughing. Maybe someone is saying something funny and I'm in the middle of laughter. And Carlos walks by. I stop. To me, Carlos became like a curse. That every time I would see him, it's like I'm seeing a curse. I hated him. So I don't laugh in front of him. If I'm laughing and he comes, I just stop. I pause there and stop. And if he passes by, I wait for him to go until I continue. But if he chooses to join the conversation, I stand up and leave. And I did that for years. If I'm walking in a pathway and he's coming from the opposite direction, I change direction. If he's passing through this door, I change the door. Like I just hated everything about him. If I loved sweet things, so even if he would buy, let's say, something like ice cream, give every child, and maybe I don't know that Carlos is the one who bought, and they give me ice cream and I'm excited and I'm about to eat and someone tells me, oh, Carlos bought it, I would give it away immediately. If no one eats it, I would drop it on the floor. I would lose desire to have it. I just didn't want anything he touched, anything. Like I just didn't want him. He felt like a curse to me. Like I could not get over it. It was deeply engraved in me, in my soul. But all that time, I was a Christian. But I didn't know anything about forgiveness, nothing of that sort. As God would have it, time rolled. I went to high school. When I reached high school, they sent Carlos. At this time, I was probably 12 or 13, between 12 and 14. So when I reached high school, one day they sent Carlos to visit us, because normally we would have one visitation in the term. A term would last 3 months, and in those 3 months you would only be visited by people from home once, and that is the time they bring you home cooked food, and that's the time they get to meet with you, have conversations with you, and carry you anything good to eat specifically. Also carry you some money to take you through the rest of the term. So people called me, kids called me at school. They have visited you, come on. So I come out, I go. My cousins, I had a lot of cousins in that same high school, in that boarding school where I was at. I had some older cousins, but these cousins were Carlos's real blood sisters and brothers. So they were having conversations with him, eating food. So when I came, I saw who came. Immediately I saw him. I lost my appetite for home cooked food. I turned and went back to the dormitory and ate my posho and beans. I hated Carlos until they told me he has left. That's when I came out to see what had happened. Because I did not try to drag anybody in, but I was not willing to have anyone talk me into a different way. I wouldn't tell anybody that, oh, I don't like your brother, nothing. It was not a topic I allowed myself to discuss, or I allowed anyone to discuss with me. I would just say I'm sick, and I would go back and sleep until he leaves. Just like that. So time continued, and he kept wondering, why does this girl hate me so much? But he would not get answers. My mother tells me, because I got to meet my mother again when I reached high school, because the school was located close to where she used to stay. So when she met me the first time later on, she told me that I had a lot of sorrow, that I never used to laugh, which was true. I never used to laugh. It's like I hated the world. I was bitter. Somehow I would laugh, but for the most part, I was bitter. I would be bitter, and I would not be bothered by it. My mother used to tell me that she would see me and she would cry inside her. And she would say, I did this to my kids. I didn't know that part until later on in life. Now back to Carlos. As I started understanding God more, I started hearing preachers talk about forgiveness. And then one day God told me, Millie, you have to forgive Carlos. I told God I can forgive anybody and anything, but I can't forgive Carlos. In fact, I reached a point where I would lie to myself. I would say, well, I forgave Carlos. I just don't ever want to see him anywhere in my life. The problem is I even didn't like kids at school whose heads were shaped like that of Carlos. When God started talking to me about forgiving Carlos, God asked me, what sin can't you forgive? I told God, I think I can forgive every sin, but I can't forgive rape. And this one came close, right up there, close. Then God told me, Millie, there is no sin. You should be able to forgive every sin. You forgive not the way people deserve, but you forgive the way I forgave. And while I was being killed to redeem you, I forgave those who nailed me to that cross. You should forgive, Millie. Oh boy, I struggled with this one. I struggled. I went through some quiet moments, prayer and fasting. And a time came and I released him. I released Carlos. I forgave Carlos. That was so hard for me. It was so hard. Because I felt like Carlos hurt me so bad. I felt like Carlos had took away my right to be a human being and treated me like some dog. I felt like Carlos made me desire death than life. And I hated Carlos for every minute that I lived. I hated him. And now I surrendered that to God and allowed God to heal my heart, to heal me from the pain. By that time I was in senior 2 in high school. You could say that is junior high, year 2. And as the Lord did a work in me, He filled me with joy. He brought back compassion in my life. And He brought back sympathy in my life. And I think I may not have ended up becoming best buddies with Carlos, but I could talk to him, not necessarily calling him and having a conversation on phone. No, but when he would walk in a room, I wouldn't walk away. I would stay, and somehow God healed me. It can be hard But that's my story. I tried sharing my story on camera, but I could not move past anything because I could just end up crying. And I didn't want to be crying. So I thought to myself, let me share it like this. Maybe it can help someone else. Maybe sometimes you can think that you are alone. It may not be like my story. It may be a different kind of story. May God help you to forgive when you forgive. Forgiving does not set free only the person that you're forgiving. It sets you free too. Because while you're unhappy, walking through life, missing out on different opportunities or friendships you could have formed with people. Imagine if people who were good people that I met in school that looked like colors, and I never gave them a chance. Why? Because they looked like colors, and they have no idea who colors is. And they don't even know that they look like colors. And I tell nobody the reasons. I just would not entertain them. So, forgive. Be set free. It's not easy. It's not simple. But may God help you. That's my story. Thank you for listening to the very end.